I personally made my students score 100% on my safety test prior to Sense before I would ever let them go in the lab because of liability issues. Now, maybe they vary from state to state, but I'm just telling you what I did. Mr. Vetter, you, same. Mr. Noah? I mean, I think you're open yourself, you might be, depending on your state, opening yourself up to a liability situation. Let me tell you something. I taught high school welding students for 27 years. You can't tell me anything I don't already know about IEPs, okay? And so you should, let me back up. You shall have assistance with that, okay? In other words, there sits two long-time friends of mine right there, a welding instructor and his administrator. I will guarantee you that if Mr. Noah has any issues with assistance with IEP students, that Mr. Reed will go out of his way to make sure that student needs what he needs to or she needs to have before they move on. Period. That's law, right? I mean, you start talking about IEP, that's law. That's just like FERPA's law, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to get in here and debate about it a lot. It is what it is. We've done what we've done. Before Steve starts, I want everybody to understand that a couple things. Number one, that these are minimum guidelines, okay? If you want to do above and beyond anything that you see, you are more than free to do so. It's just, you know, a lot of people believe it's a curriculum. I believe most of the AWS Board of Directors didn't know any different until John Mendoza got a slide presentation from you and he showed it to the Board of Directors. So who are we? Let me back up. Who is any organization to tell you, the subject matter experts, on what curriculum you should use or should not use? We're just simply saying use whatever curriculum you like that works, and these are the minimum guidelines, period.
Yeah. So basically, your curriculum should basically fulfill the requirements of the guidelines. So again, Ed Norman, I'm sure you're familiar with Ed, chair of the AWS Education Committee. My name is Steve Houston. I chaired the Sense subcommittee. So I'm also on the Education Committee and honored to be so. We're going to talk a little bit about Level 2 today. I'm sure you're pretty much familiar with Level 1. We're going to, obviously David's covered what is Sense, so we're not going to really focus on that. I want to talk a little bit about Level 1 just to give you a review quickly of what just one slide on what the optional and compulsory modules are. I want to do a quick comparison of the old Level 2 and the new Level 2 to show you the difference in design, the flexibility that we built in. And then go into the compulsory and optional Level 2 modules and talk about the opportunity to do QC 7 certification or qualification and endorsements from the old Level 3. Basically, old Level 3 is now incorporated into Level 2 as endorsements. So if you want your students to be able to do titanium, you can do titanium. It would be considered an endorsement. It's certainly not a requirement of Level 2. But if a company decides, you know, titanium is important, they will titanium, they can include that as an endorsement. What is Sense? The big thing here is the point number 2. It's not a curriculum, as Ed says. It's basically guidelines. And the goal to me, as we were developing this, is really it's designed to keep America competitive in a global marketplace by supplying industry with quality welders. That's what it's all about. It's not trying to fulfill every, you know, dot every I and cross every T necessarily. It's producing quality welders to keep America competitive in this global marketplace. You've been through the history. Let me just talk about the modularization aspects of it. Level 1 was actually modularized. It was completed in 2009. We did that because secondary schools were really having a problem fulfilling all the requirements of Sense without a modular program. I mean, very few schools had the budget or the time at the high school level to do all welding processes plus all the required modules. So we broke it down and made it modular. Sense Level 2 We did a modularization on that. We have completed that. It was completed early this year. The education department now has that, and they will be, they're in the process now of beginning the finalization of the documents and the implementation of the program so that you can use it. Here's a quick overview of Sense Level 1 modules, okay, just to remind you. On the right-hand side, you have the required modules. There is occupational orientation, health and safety, drawing and welding symbols, thermal cutting processes, a minimum of OFC and PAC because those were the processes that were required in the workmanship qualification tests. And then welding inspection and testing methods. And then on the optional side are all your welding processes. So if you did all your required modules and you took your students through shielded metal arc plate, you could get an AWS certification for them for shielded metal arc plate. You don't have to take them through gas metal arc, flux cord, and GTW. So.
I have a question. So let's say the high schools that feed my program, for example, they're all level 1 schools. I'm level 1, level 2. So if a student comes, let's say he's only completed SMAW, he comes to my school, he can complete the others, and those would be like endorsements, or
No.
how would that work?
Basically, those would be level 1. You'd basically be carrying on level 1 at that point.
To full
Okay.
completion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if it wasn't, let's say for example, we'll talk about, this will become clearer later on, but let's say for example in your area, shielded metal arc was really the only thing that was worthwhile teaching. And so you were training for a particular industry in your college, and shielded metal arc was it. If he had, or she had shielded metal arc plate, you could take them into level 2 shielded metal arc plate under this new system. If you were offering these other programs and they were required in your particular program, these other processes, then they would still be at the level 1 level in gas metal arc, flux cord arc, and GTW, if you know what I mean. Okay, so once an individual has completed their level 1 in a process, they would now, under the new one, be able to actually go into level 2 in that particular process.
And/or in your case, they could finish the rest of the level 1 processes to complete level 1. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
However you would want to do that. It's kind of like you asked that question earlier about you only have so much time.
Right.
Well, this now allows you, to align this to where the student walks away with a credential without the time constraint on you of doing all of it.
There would be no expiration. I have a student who was in the program, and because of a cancer diagnosis, he couldn't come back, but he got a clear bill of health, and now he's going to come back. Because he didn't finish number 9, that's all he needs. So he can come back at any time.
Now, there is no expiration date on this.
Okay, great.
So,
I'd have to look in QC10.
I don't
see-
think there should be any.
I didn't-
We
well,
talked about
I have
that.
to check in QC10.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But if you're familiar with that, then
okay, so my program, for example, the intro to welding technology, I require all 9 modules. Do you want us that are doing that, though, to cut back and say, okay, if you complete one of the optionals, they can still get a certificate, that sort of thing, or do we continue on with the full-on program? Does that make sense?
Well, and we're going to let you do it your way. But what we would like you what I would like to see you do is, let's just say, for example, use the same example that we used where the student, he or she came in with only SMAW. And then, so you took him or her and you took them through number 5. At that point, when they have completed module 5, it would really be nice if you'd go ahead and record that and that date at that time. And then take them to, you see what I'm saying? In other words, don't wait till the end and then put everything in the computer. All right? I don't know if David's still in the room or not, but we've got forms at AWS that's got everything was done and all processes was done and on the same date. You see?
Right.
So-
So if they complete the required and 1 optional, they're not eligible for the certificate, the card, and everything. You you want the full program completed before that, correct?
No.
No?
If they get all the required, the whole purpose of modularization is for a high school that has limited resources and time to say, okay, you can only teach them shielded metal arc welding, therefore they can become certified in shielded metal arc welding, AWS Sense certified in shielded metal arc welding, if they've completed all their prerequisites. That's the only thing they have to do. And then any one of, or more of those processes, they can actually get their AWS certification.
So if you're restricted on time and/or if the student would move, like David said earlier, you know, and they was enrolled in another Sense school, then they could pick up.
Okay, yes, you have a question?
For colleges that use some type of, you know, a kind of online learning environment, can the question be posted online?
You mean the tests?
Yes, the test.
They are
David.
online. Dave,
Not anymore. Now that we have the Sense Online system, we do not want any of those questions to exist anywhere digitally except for the Sense Online system. We need to do a better job of protecting the integrity of the exam. And so part of the reason why we created the online system was that eventually we would like to get to the point where everyone's using the online system. Realistically, we know that some schools can't afford the computer technology, so we have to keep offering the paper and pencil. But we do not give at this moment any school permission or any state permission to do that.
No, if you want to, in other words, if you want to copy and paste that into a Blackboard situation, no.
all right, yes.
One thing I was wondering about is, I think I got the idea, but in my area, pretty much the only processes used are MIG and a little bit of TIG. So would it make most sense for us to go through the required modules, then number 5 and 7, then take them to Sense Level 2 and focus on MIG and TIG again, Level 2?
That's completely up to you.
Yes.
Who are we to tell you not to do
Yeah,
that?
it's what's important to you, your local, businesses in your community and so forth. If they need to be, if that's all your community demands,
Right.
gas, metal arc, and GTAW, then you can get them level 1 and then go to level 2. Take them into plate level 2. So, okay, so let's move on here. This is basically a look at what level 2 was and what level 2 is. On the left-hand side, you see what level 2 was, and on the right-hand side, the modifications that we made. So level 2 is basically divided into 5 compulsory courses. There were no options. It focused on workmanship qualifications, not on performance qualifications. So ultimately what you were doing in level 2 was meaningless to industry because you were basically, if you're familiar with the Sense level 1 7-piece workpieces, you're basically doing the same kinds of things as workmanship qualification for level 2. There was no trade math, and trade math was identified by WeldEd some time ago as a major weakness, basically in industry and people coming into industry. And there was no coverage of advanced welding process, or advanced cutting processes. So basically, what we did in level 3, or in level 2 rather, EG 3.0, was we modularized the program for optimum implementation flexibility. You don't have to, it's not an all or nothing program anymore. It's all modular. We'll look at the modules in a moment. We focused on industry recognized performance qualification tests. So now you're actually doing 3G and 4G, unlimited thickness, groove welds. So you're doing 2F, 3F, and 4F fillet welds and so forth. So, and then you're doing pipe as well, if that's something that's of value to you, and 6G is your test position for that. So these are all recognized in industry. So by the time your students test out of your program, they're ready to walk into any business and do a test and hopefully be successful. We added a compulsory trade math module, and we added thermal cutting processes and added position for cutting on shape cuts and pipe. So those are the major changes. And let's take a look at the actual breakdown of modules. Here you have required modules again. Trade math is a required module. Welding metallurgy is a required module. Welding inspection and testing methods. Documents governing welding and welding inspection. And thermal cutting processes. And then your optional processes, just as in level 1, are the actual welding processes themselves. The optional modules are the welding processes. So now, instead of just plate, you have plate, shielded metal arc plate, and shielded metal arc pipe. Gas metal arc plate, gas metal arc pipe, so on down the line. And then there's actually a welding fabrication option. If you have a welding fab program, there's an option for you which deals with welding fab, and we'll take a look at that as we get through the detail of each of the modules. Okay, so that's the breakdown. Now, let's take a look at the compulsory modules quickly here. Trade math, basic math functions with fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals, reading a rule in U.S. customary and metric, U.S. customary to metric conversions, and calculating volume and weight. Essentially, that's what it's all about right there. Welding metallurgy, if I was to summarize, I'd say what a welder needs to know about metal, not everything there is to know about metallurgy. Okay, and we're talking about carbon steel, stainless steel, aluminum. For a welder, how does heat affect metal? And how, for example, in carbon steel, what am I doing when I heat metal, and how do I get it back to where it should be? So obviously heat treatment is a very important part of the process. So when we talk about metallurgy, we're not talking about engineering level. We're talking about what a welder needs to know. Welding inspection and testing, destructive testing and non-destructive examination methods. What are they and where are they used? They should be familiar with a fillet break test, a macro etch, whether they perform it or whether you demonstrate it. Sometimes, because of the chemicals involved, obviously we're recommending the least dangerous etching material, but then they should be also able to do a dye penetrant, just to get a feel for what that's all about. So that's welding inspection and testing methods. Documents governing welding and welding inspection should be familiar with welding codes and standards. Base metal and filler metal specs, and your basic documents like WPSs, WPQRs, material test reports, and welding qualification test records. What are those things, and how are they used?
Do you know offhand, say I went and registered to get in with Sense today, would I be able to get D1.1 as one of the books that I got from our library?
I don't think so,
No, there's not.
because you're looking at what, close to $500 there.
So I'm trying to remember to repeat questions. I'm not doing a very good job of it. Question is D11 included in the Sense library? And no, but there are several other really good texts, reference books in there. Thermal cutting processes. There's a lot of emphasis now on thermal cutting, manual OFC. You're doing horizontal and vertical square and bevel edge welds, horizontal and vertical shape cuts, pipe cutting, square and bevel with a pipe axis in the horizontal and vertical position, and then mechanized OFC, basically flat position, square and bevel edge cuts with pipe beveler. Thermal cutting processes, basically the same as what you saw in OFC, with stainless steel and aluminum pipe being optional. Very few schools have the wherewithal to go out and get stainless steel and aluminum pipe just for cutting purposes, or have it around. So if you're in industry and if this is important for your industry, you can actually use stainless steel and aluminum pipe. Otherwise, you don't have the wherewithal to get it, then it's not a requirement, it's just an option. And then air carbon arc, horizontal and vertical square and bevel edge cuts, and shape cuts, gouging in the vertical position, pipe cutting again, square and bevel edge with your pipe axis horizontal and vertical. The whole idea is to give them a sense of what's happening when you're cutting in the vertical position or when you're cutting in the horizontal position, so. And then, with respect to level 2, advanced welder places an increased emphasis on multi-pass welds and industry-recognized performance qualifications, as we talked about before. Now, anybody got any questions on the whole cutting aspect of things before we move on? We'll just move on here then. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick rundown. Keep in mind that what you're seeing on the left are your prerequisites, your level 1. And in level 1, you did all position fillet and groove welds, all position workmanship qualification. That was that 7-piece workpiece. It's part of Sense Level 1. And the only performance qualification test actually in level 1 is the 2G and 3G limited thickness test for the shielded metal arc process. So now you look at level 2, and in order to reduce the confusion on this, if you look at plate, you'll notice that you're doing 2F, 3F, and 4F position fillet welds. And pretty much every process that we look at in plate, you're going to see those same positions. 3G and 4G groove welds, you're going to see those same test positions. And you're going to see them as practice with and without backing, as you see here. But when they're actually doing their performance qualification, they can do with or without backing. So it's with and without backing as practice to get them experience, and then you decide whether it's going to be with or without backing based on what's required in your industry. And you're going to see these positions come up again and again. There's a lot of material here, but it's basically boiling down to the same positions.
And one more thing, sorry, Steve. One more thing that you're going to see is you're going to see that over there, for example, passes 3G, 4G on carbon steel with 309. Okay, so what we're basically saying is, unless you have an unlimited bank account or program budget, we're allowing you to use carbon steel with stainless steel filler. Okay, just as a means for you to save some money. Okay,
Instead of stainless steel.
Right. Did I say something different?
No.
Okay, so just so you understand, when you read that, the whole initiative was that we're trying to keep in mind here.
Now, in level 1, you were dealing with carbon steel and carbon steel electrodes. Level 2, you're dealing with carbon steel with stainless steel electrodes. In other words, you know, it's a substitute for welding on stainless, but it's cutting your costs. So, shielded metal arc pipe. Again, these positions are pretty much common throughout all of the processes. 2F, 4F, and 5F pipe to plate. 2G, 5G, and 6G. You have the option of going 4 to 8 inch, schedule 40 to schedule 80, with and without backing for your practice tests, for your practice pieces, and then your actual test is a 6G position, and it's going to be on schedule 80, 4 or 8 inch, with or without backing. So you'll see these positions come up again and again.
And one more thing real quick, just so you know, that level 2 was modularized like this, and the input we got wasn't just Steve and I sitting down at a table and saying, okay, this is what we think they should have. Every skilled trades organization that does apprenticeship training is represented on the committee. So we had all those input. We had industry inputs. We had people from post-secondary education, secondary education, all giving input to this entire project. Yes, sir.
So do some of the apprenticeship programs for the trade unions, they use the SENS programs?
David, is anybody used? While he's thinking, I think this is what we were thinking. Okay, we were wanting to make sure that we wanted their input for this reason, is that if your student left you and decided to go in one of the skill trades, then they would just be miles ahead of someone walking off the street into the apprenticeship program. does that make sense? In other words, the quicker they can gain, hello stranger, the quicker they can gain journeyman status, right, means the game changer amount in the paycheck, right? So we wanted their input to know what, let us know what they wanted to see for their individual apprenticeship programs.
So they're aware of it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
These are basically the positions that they're actually testing.
Yeah,
And the,
the iron workers, I know, they don't teach sense, but the iron workers do recognize sense, and if you wanted to move up in the iron workers, one of the ways to do it is to become, is to complete sense level 1 and sense level 2. I know the pipe fitter, I just can't remember right now.
Okay.
Having come through the skilled trades and a little bit in now teaching is, no, they don't teach it, but it does give you a step up ahead of coming into someone who doesn't have anything or may have come through someplace that doesn't. They do recognize the training, but they're still going to go through their entire apprenticeship program.
We just set up an agreement with the UA, they actually came to us, and what they'll do, it's a written agreement, they'll fast track our guys to come through our program, they'll knock off 2 years of their 5-year apprenticeship, and they get preferred entry into the program, they don't have to wait, they're just put into it automatically. So that, and they don't teach sense, but that's how it's right,
That-
level 1, level 2.
but they do these tests.
Yes,
Right,
yes, so,
right.
my guys go in are familiar with what they're doing, they don't follow all the sense guidelines, fill out the paperwork and that sort of stuff.
So the trade unions do these tests, and the whole goal here was to make the Sense Level 2 program more relevant to what these young people are going to find when they go into industry. And that when someone in the trade union or someone in the manufacturing world looks at these certs, they say, oh, 3G, 4G, okay, that's exactly what we're going to test you on. You know, now they're going to go, I doubt that anyone's going to walk into a shop with this and they are going to be tested when they go in for a job, right? But at least they're going to have an experience of what these tests are. They're going to go through the process. The student's going to go through the process of experiencing a guided bend test or a side bend test, probably in these cases. They're going to go through pipe tests. They're going to see all the stuff that's actually required of them. It's not going to be a mystery when they walk in, and they're going to be well rehearsed. So that's the whole goal. All right, here's GMAW. Again, on the left is what happened in level 1. And on the right is level 2. And as you see in spray transfer, we have a little bit different situation because the process will allow 1G. So we're doing basically a 1G unlimited thickness test with gas metal arc spray transfer. We got post-spray transfer all position. Again, 3G and 4G with and without backing. And you have your unlimited test, 3G and 4G, with or without backing. So your choice on the test, but we're recommending as a guideline, give them practice doing both with and without backing. Post-spray transfer stainless, again, carbon steel with stainless steel filler. And if you've got the resources to use stainless steel, more power to you. So, you know, not many schools that I know of have those resources. Spray transfer aluminum, 1F, 2F, and 1G, and then the test would be a 1G unlimited thickness with backing. In this case, it's with backing only because of the fluidity of the process. GMAW pipe, again, you see these regular positions, the 2, 2F, 4F, and 5F. And then your groove welds here for pipe, 2G, 5G, and 6G. Again, a range of pipe available to you, and then you're testing out on 4 to 8 inch Schedule 80 with a 6G position. Spray transfer, 2F pipe to plate, and a 1G groove weld with a pulse or a short-circuiting transfer route, and the remainder is GMAW spray. Okay. Again, your range of pipes, and then you're testing out in the 1G position, short-circuiting route, and the remainder in GMAW spray transfer. Pulse spray, let's go through pulse spray and we'll take your question. Pulse spray transfer, again, you'll see these positions, 2F, 4F, 5F, and then your groove welds, and then your basic 6G testing position. Yes?
The schools are to qualify their own procedures on these, or?
Question is, do the schools qualify their own procedures on these tests? I think the plan is that they'll be using, hopefully, pre-qualified. Is that correct?
Yeah, all these tests will have WPSs, and they're going to come basically from the SWPSs that AWS offers for sale. But they're going to be watermarked for educational purposes only.
Do they have the SWPS's for
It-
pipe?
They will come with it, yes, sir.
Now, the other thing is that your drawings that will be available will actually have the WPS information listed in the right-hand side of the drawing, just as level, remember in level 1, one of the gentleman who presented on certification, the certification module on WellDat? Do you remember?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Remember that image he showed? He liked that drawing because it had the WPS right on it. That similar thing will be done in level 2 drawings. So that drawing he showed you was from level 1. The level 2 drawings will be very much similar to that with the parameters and so forth spelled out on the right-hand side of the drawing. But there will be individual WPSs for all of these. FCAW, again on your left, you've got your plate exercises from level 1. Keep in mind that those are a prerequisite to get into plate for level 2. You see the same exercises. Gas shielded exercises are listed. Self-shielded are the same as gas shielded. And in pipe, you'll notice that we have gas shielded only. So the pipe exercises are gas shielded, and you'll recognize the positions from previous slides. Again, we're using with and without backing rings for the pipe. GTAW, and again, these are modular, so you're not having to put your students through all this. You can pick modules that you want them to go through, gas, tungsten arc, and you don't have to do plate and pipe. If you're not teaching pipe in your area, if you don't have pipe issues there, then you're only teaching plate. You don't have to worry about pipe. Again, the pipe is an option, but in order to teach pipe, you'd have to actually do level 2 plate first and then pipe. So GTAW, carbon steel, I'm looking on the right-hand side now. Carbon steel, you've noticed those positions from previous slides. Stainless steel, we're dealing with carbon steel and stainless steel filler. And then aluminum, the same thing that we've seen before. Now, the thickness of the material is thinner here. It's 3/8, not 1 inch, obviously. So that's your plate. And then your pipe. You've got carbon steel and stainless steel. You recognize the positions. You'll note that stainless steel is carbon steel again with stainless steel filler. Ken?
Go on this pipe thing here, because our industry is very, very little aluminum around it all. It's all stainless and carbon. Is that something that, because to follow into that level 2 category, teach that, is that something we can still have to implement so they can get their sense level 2?
At this point, are you talking about like all processes that have
Right.
like TIG, basically
Right,
TIG,
the
we've
TIG
got aluminum.
process,
TIG
right.
and TIG and MIG, really.
Right.
We haven't, basically it's a requirement currently
Okay,
of this, it's a minimum requirement
okay.
of, at this point, level 2. We didn't say or in this
Okay,
case.
and that's what I want to clarify, so this is something that we would have to look at doing.
The only exception was when we looked at PAC, plasma arc cutting, we included carbon steel, aluminum, and stainless steel, but we said on the pipe side of it, the stainless steel and aluminum pipe were optional, so. And then there is an interesting option down here at the bottom. I think I can, right here. This is a UA test, actually, a UA pipe test. So if you're supplying UA welders, you would at least want them to have familiarity with this particular test. It's the 2.75-inch Schedule 180. It's basically a thick wall pipe with a GTAW root pass and an optional first intermediate pass, or what do they call a hot pass, right? And then the rest of it is shielded metal arc all the way out, so it's like 70-18 out. But that's a very common test used in the UA right there. Super coupon, yeah. And what else? And this is the optional fabrication module. Now, it's considered a capstone project, so not everyone's going to be interested in doing this. It requires a bend, a shearing operation, and a drilling operation. It's a very simple piece, actually. There's an optional pipe component, so if your student has taken pipe, or if you've taught pipe, you can add the pipe component to it, weld the pipe on. And we're saying that these are the prerequisites. Obviously, trade math and thermal cutting are required anyway, but it's an all-process fabrication test. So if you haven't taught all processes, really you're not, you could go through the process of teaching fabrication with one, but you're not going to get AWS Sense certification on it, if you know what I mean. So.
But we recognize that there was a lot of post-secondary, 2-year community colleges or technical colleges that were teaching not just a welding program, but they were also teaching welding fabrication component. So we wanted to offer that as an option, as an optional module.
We're actually building a new shop next year to put an overhead crane in and going to teach fitting. Do you foresee something like Sense for fitters, where it's a standardized, maybe even an AWS certification for fitters in the future?
Well, I don't think we would be the people to ask about AWS certification on it. I mean, as far as, speaking on behalf of AWS, I don't know. And David, I don't know if do you want to address that? The question is, does AWS foresee a fitter certification?
Like a QC standard?
A QC standard for,
I don't think we're working on it right now.
and the answer is we're not sure that we're not working on it right now, basically.
Yeah, but we are looking at doing some training materials for cities.
I'm in Utah, and they hired 10 fitters there as well right now.
Have you found any standards for that yet? National standards?
That's the thing, I haven't found any national standards. What we're doing is I'm taking my advisory committee and saying, okay, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Because we've got, it covers the whole gamut of fitting, pipe fitting, that sort of stuff. We have sanitary piping, pipelines, structural fitting. So this shop we're building, 10,000 square feet, I'm going to put a 10-ton overhead crane. They're going to learn how to use plate clamps. They're going to fit a, 30-foot diameter tank and stuff like that.
I'm going to put Darren Haas on the spot here. He works with a lot of fitters in his business. He's in the ship business. Do you know? Are you, Darren, aware of any standard or?
No, we wrote a few of them in the state, but it's mostly for ship fitting. It's not for regular stroke fitting. Mostly for ship fitting.
I think I'd be willing to say that if the certification committee has enough interest, or let's just say they hear from, then I think they would certainly take a look at that. But that falls under would be falling under the certification committee. Anytime you use the word, there's only one place that I know of that is allowed the use of the word certification outside of the certification department and committee, is this Sense certification, period. And that has been like, back and forth. But we have to have that verbiage to meet Perkins requirements, period. So that's why they're letting us.
Yes, sir.
I know
Okay, so, okay, all right, so we can talk about that. All right, so let's see. Here are some drawings. So these are basically rough drawings. These will be professionally done, but this is to give you an idea like of gas, metal arc, pulsed spray transfer. You know, this is the kind of thing you're going to see as a drawing. On the right-hand side, you're going to see your basic WPS information. Okay? Here is a GMAWP pipe drawing. Again, on the right-hand side, you'll see your WPS information. And then here is a FCAW pipe, open root and with backing. So this is the kind of thing you're going to be looking at as drawings. Very much similar to the format that you saw in level 1 or you see in level 1 and done for level 2. Now let's move on here to QC7. We developed, or we wrote into the QC11 document the option for you to have your students, if they wish, certified under QC7, where I don't know if it's, having sat in on the session on certification and qualification, I'm not sure now whether one would say QC7 certification or QC7 qualification. So whatever is appropriate, you can get QC7 for your SMAW, GMAW, FCAW, and GTAW performance qualifications, since they're already industry standard performance qualifications. All that they require is that they're done in an ATF, an authorized testing facility, and the results would be sent to AWS certification department because it's an actual certification, and the education department would also be privy to that so that they could give appropriate sense accreditation for, or credit for that as well. But this would be an actual test. The student would have to pay for it. You know, it's basically, they'd be going out into an authorized testing facility and say, I want to be QC7 tested on this particular position.
So if you've got a AWS accredited testing facility near you and your students chose to go there to take these tests, and their student is going to walk away not only now with an AWS certification, welder certification card, but they're also going to have a Sense card as well. Does that make sense? That's why we're asking you to send the results of that to the certification department as well as the education department. Now, some people are located, might be 600 miles to the closest ATF, which we understand is a burden. But I know there's a big push about trying to, gather more or create more interest in the ATFs. So hopefully that will become
So this option is available to you and your students. And this is available because you're using industry standard testing positions, basically. This is a sample of a certificate. This is actually the level 1 certificate, but your students would get a Sense level 2 certificate. On that certificate would be marked the modules that they had completed. There would be a wallet card involved with the same information. And then optional endorsements, briefly on that. Level 3, when you look at level 3, if you're familiar with level 1, 2, and 3, level 3 was basically, it required 3 to 5 years practical experience. And then how many students are actually going to come back to your school after 3 to 5 years of work experience and go through another level of Sense, which really amounted to the workings of the CWI exam and some performance tests. I think there might be titanium and some other exotics involved. So what we said was, look, let's just collapse the performance qualification tests from level 3 into level 2 and offer them as endorsements. So you can actually have endorsements on whatever, actually it doesn't have to be just the materials that were in level 3. If you have a specialized material, if you're an organization that welds this particular type of material, you can actually get an endorsement on that material. And you can also have QC7 certification for that as well, but that'd be done, again, at an ATF and so forth, so.
So essentially, what level 3 was, other than some useful exotic materials, was junk. Because it required your student to leave and have so many years industry experience. Then that required them to come back to you. And then on top of that, they offered a test out option to becoming a CWI. So who wouldn't have taken that test out option? So you see what we're saying? So we got rid of the junk and we kept what was pertinent as far as the exotic material portions of it for those of you that's in aerospace or nuclear or whatever. And we kept it in there. You know, we don't say you have to use it, but we left it in there in case you might need it.
There you go. Questions, comments? I appreciate the questions all the way throughout, so.
Now, this new level 2 then is going to be effective right away?
Actually, it's in the hands of the education department right now.
David, the question is, when's level 2 going to be rolled out?
It's actually being laid out now. So it's actually getting prepared, printing and everything now with the layout people. The last thing that we have to do is we're compiling all the drawings for the WPS, SWCS in the back of the book. So we're figuring that it'll be released in a digital format in January and in a paper copy in February.
Yeah, what happens, our school just signed up for the,
When you become a Sense program, you get digital updates for free forever.
It's a one-time fee. Whatever level you want to purchase, or both, it's a one-time fee. You get all revisions for free, unlike other organizations.
And I can,
What?
and I can tell you.
Wait a minute, I know why you're laughing. I thought I've done it pretty well right there.
And I can also tell you that the digital revision is important because level 2 is going to be released in January, February, but I can tell you there's going to be a major update to, nothing that's going to affect the actual guidelines for the curriculum, but guidelines for implementation of the program. There'll be a major update coming out next year, separate from that. So that's one of the benefits of having the online system and being able to produce these things digitally is that you get all those updates right away free. And, you know, you don't have to worry about getting a new book or waiting for it to be shipped out to you or anything like that.
Did a question?
Yeah, what's the cost of level 2?
What's the cost of level 2?
600?
600, which includes level 1, doesn't it, or is that separate?
I believe if you get level 2, it comes with level 1.
If you pay $600, it should come with level 1 and level 2.
So if you're already at level 1, you want to add 2, you add to pay 100 additional or 100?
No.
So if you're already level 1 and you want to add level 2, what's the additional?
Correct.
I don't recall anyone doing that before.
I think that's when the $1,500 charge comes in or something. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
It's called slow rolling.
I don't. Well, I mean, you know. Yeah. I mean,
It's a one-man show.
you got to. Well, you got to dangle it out there. You know, are you going to smell it before you eat it, or are you just going to eat it? You know.
Is this looking good to you, or?
But
Yeah.
we want to know what we want your input. We're not here trying to sell you anything. We're not anything. Okay, nothing.
That's intense. That's an intense
What
program.
we're telling you is this
Yeah,
is
and the
what.
nice thing is it's option, it's modular.
Yeah. So
Well, in 1998, when Shirley Bollinger was the president of AWS, she came to Kansas City, to Skills USA, and she asked me, and she brought a gentleman from the Education Services Department, his name was Manny Bravo, with her. And she asked me to go over to the lobby of their hotel, and Manny was going to show me this all or nothing, you know, before it was put in modular form. And she said, Ed, would you just please look through this and tell me what you think? So I looked through level 1, and I said, I like what I see, but I would never buy it. And I thought Manny was going to have a heart attack. And she said, why? I said, because there's schools all across this country that don't have the time to get their student all the way through this, and it was all or nothing. They had to do it all or nothing. And so she said, well, what do you suggest? And I said, well, I suggest you put it in modular format by welding process to allow, because as schools, different states' requirements from their Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, whether they are increasing high school graduate requirements or whatever, is cutting down on your time with the students, right? So different states have different time allotments. You had a concern about that earlier. And so all we're trying to do is we're trying to give you a workable set of minimum guidelines that you can do. And if you do anything above and beyond that, God bless you. We would love to see you do that. But there has to be, and as far as I'm concerned, the American Welding Society is the only national recognized organization for welding, period. That's just my opinion. We can debate that if you like later. But anyway, that's just my feeling. That's why we done it, was because they probably gave away more than they sold in the first 2 or 3 years. Because in all actuality, in a lot of places, it just absolutely could not be done because of time restraints or whatever the case may be. Various different reasons. Yes.
I think it preserves the integrity of the Sense program a lot more by doing away with level 3, because Hobart's about the only school I know that can legitimately offer level 3. It's just unattainable for everybody else. But I do have a question.
But they still have to come back after 2 to 3 years of
Right.
practical experience.
And
So,
how many schools are doing that?
Well, how many
really,
students are going to do that?
I think that was probably implemented sometime down the way back for the trade unions. Because you could, a union person could come back in for training after 2 to 3 years in the field and then move through that. It was kind of modeled on the European system, I think.
Yeah. A question I have, for example, we get a lot of demand for aluminum bus piping for power plants, for example. So I've got guys coming in all the time, and we even qualified a procedure and have them test to it. We did tensile pulls and everything like that. Is the new level 2 going to be open to endorsements like that are pretty specialized, but still something that I think is viable? Is it D1.2?
So you're basically saying
It's a 4-inch aluminum bus for power plants, and it's D1.2.
So it doesn't fall in that aluminum category? It would not fall in
No,
there?
because your aluminum on level 2 is only plate. It's 1F, 2F, and 1G.
Okay.
On the GTAW. And, well, no.
They had pipe on there.
Did it on the GTA? Oh,
Yeah,
okay, it's a
yeah.
GMAW, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because these guys are doing GMAW in my shop.
Well, so that would just simply mean to us that you've gone above the minimum,
Right.
and so that's good.
Would an endorsement be available for that?
I don't see why it couldn't be.
Um,
I mean, if it's not offered, right.
anything that's not offered as part of the, in other words, these performance qualifications that are offered in the Sense program could be considered as an endorsement, in my view. Now, I would check with AWS to make sure, if you're doing that currently and you want to, are you at level 2 school now? It sounds like it would be covered under an endorsement. That's what the purpose of endorsements is if you're doing more exotic type stuff. Companies that are welding titanium, that sort of thing, they can get endorsements because the material is simply not covered under level 2.
Would that go through certification department?
If you want an AWS Sense certification, it goes through the education department. If you want an industry like a QC
Welder certification.
7 certification, then that would go through the
an
certification
ATA.
department.
Yeah.
And if you were a Sense school and wanted it to count toward your AWS Sense credits, you would copy to the education department.
Yeah. Now, let me give you an example real quick of what some of David's staff has to put up with.
Mostly they have to put up with me.
Now, I was down there last week and saw this firsthand. I was on the phone with a welding educator, and I will not mention this state. So if you were the person on the phone last week talking to me, then I'm talking about you. We had, and we showed you up there on GMAW, you had to do short circuiting and spray, right? And I was on the phone for 35 minutes on the speakerphone. All right, it was, you can ask Alina Blanco, this was killing me, physically killing me. My head, I want to just bang, so, anyway, here was his question. Do we have to do the spray? Yes. Well, we can't. Well, why can't you? Well, because our equipment, we don't have the equipment to spray. I said, what equipment are you using to do the short circuiting or the short arc with? He said, you mean what machinery? And I said, yeah. He said, we're making 350 MPs. And I said, well, I said, I mean, since I bought 19 of those particular machines one year, I said, you know, are you using, I said, I'm having one more question here, and I'm shaking my head the whole time. And I said, are you drawing your shielding gas from a manifold, or are you drawing off a cylinder? He said, cylinders. I said, good. I said, you can call your supplier, and I would suggest you use 90-10, but you use whatever you want to, but you have to have at least 80% argon to be in spray transfer mode. Really? I swear to God. Really? Yeah. That's it. So, his people, God bless them, have to listen to this kind of stuff all the time. I told you earlier, I've seen forms down there that every welding process, all the way through level 1, all was done on the same day. How can that happen?
I can tell you why. I only have so much time, and I have to wait till the end of the semester, and I enter it all at once.
Well, but our problem is
It
that...
doesn't let you customize the date
Well,
on the input.
No, you should be able to enter the date, whatever date that student, let's just say on the written test, for example. Let's just use that for example. If the dates you do the written test, you should enter it. In other words, all those were the same date. And then you went to the performance and the workmanship
But those were
samples.
handwritten. Those were handwritten.
I know, but they were all on the same day.
They were handwritten.
Now, you have to understand something. You said the word earlier, validity, okay? This puts validity to it. And we believe that too. But what challenges validity is something that's sent to them like that. Because if I'm David, I'm going to say, and I see that, I'm going to say, you send it back to him, we're not going to accept it. That's just the kind of person I am. I don't have time. He don't have time. His people are extremely busy. How are you going to do that? You going to let that fly or not? How hard it is to put it in, especially if you're doing it online. You know, enter the date, it's done. But I'm just giving you examples of what they have to deal with on a daily basis.